Okay, books I should have read but have not yet. I think that's an important thing to add. Um, if this was a couple of years ago or even last year, it would include Thackeray's Vanity Fair and Trollope's The Way We Live Now, um, two very interesting mid 19th century novels that for some reason I just had avoided. Not a question of how long they were, but and they are both quite long. I just couldn't. I just quite couldn't. I couldn't face them. Don't know why. I read them both. I did find Vanity Fair quite tiresome, I have to say. The fact that everything seems to be reported, you're never kind of deep in the action. You don't feel present inside scenes. It's always just what has happened, or and so it feels like it is in a sense it is an early novel. It's not that early, but it feels like an early novel um, in the genre, not in terms of Thackeray. On the other hand, one can't argue with the genius of Becky Sharp. Um, uh, she's Her background seems to me incredibly interesting and very modern. It's almost as though her background is from the early 20th century. It feels very kind of bohemian and artistic and sort of, lofts and attics and artist studios and things like that, which you sort of don't feel is a sort of, early 19th century, um, late 18th century milieu. Um, but other than Becky Sharp, I didn't find it particularly enthralling. There is an interesting thing. I'm sure other people have noticed this, that there is a similarity in in her journey, and some scenes between her and Lily Bart in The House of Mirth, which is one of my favourite ever novels, top five. Um, so uh, I have read them, but and the other thing about sorry, Trollops, no, Trollops, The Way We Live Now, has one of the most extraordinary um, mother daughter son relationships triangle. A mother's deep love of her son and sort of just not caring about her daughter, which I feel is sort of timeless. It's certainly as relevant today in certain relationships between mothers and children than just in that particular time, um, when males were often preeminent in society and whatever have you. Um, and it's kind of interesting in its own way, but they're books I have read, and this is about books I haven't read. So, but the one book I haven't read, which I don't understand why I haven't, is this, which is Gustave Flaubert's The Sentimental Education. Um, and I haven't read it, and this is the only copy I have, which isn't a particularly attractive copy, although I just did realise or notice that it says a new translation by Perdita Burlingame, which is quite a name, Perdita Burlingame. What's odd about having not read this is it's supposed to be Gustave Flaubert's greatest novel, if not his. I mean, it's obviously not his most famous because that's Madame Bovary, but also I think Flaubert for me is the grandfather of the prose I particularly kind of love. Precise and perfect, almost disinterested prose. He's the grandfather of Mandarin prose. And so I feel as though that's a novel I should have read and I haven't. And I will. Um, I remember that famous scene from Woody Allen's Manhattan, where he's listing all the things he loves. At one point, says he lists Louis Armstrong and baseball and stuff, and he says and a sentimental education by Flaubert, and I was meant to read it from that point on, and I haven't, and I watched that film 30 years ago. Um, but now is the big confession. I haven't read anything by Jane Austen. That's not completely true because I've obviously read things she's written inside critical studies of writing and the novel and whatever. But in terms of a whole novel, I have not read a novel by Jane Austen. And I think I have a good excuse, is that I'm past the point where I can read them kind of in, in context, uncritically. I've seen the films, I've seen the TV series more than once for more than the novels, more than one novel. I've read endless essays about her. She's at the absolute centre of our culture, often our literary culture, our popular culture. When I was published by Penguin, I got a call every 2 or 3 months. What's your favourite um, moment, Jane Austen moment? Well, I don't have one. What's your favourite Jane Austen? She's it's almost taken for granted, and I haven't. And so therefore, to read her now is almost, I imagine, to read a kind of meta text on the novel that I know so well that I haven't read. And that seems to me a place that is, or an experience that is very odd. And that actually means I can't join the Jane Austen conversations, because most people read them when they were young, and every time they read them, they're on a kind of journey from when they first read them. It's be very hard to read just Jane Austen at this point. It doesn't mean I'm not going to, um, but it is, I think, an excuse, because some people think I wear this as a badge of pride, and I really don't. But it is, I think, a legitimate excuse that to read her now is to read almost a commentary on other forms of that novel. It is obviously, and so it becomes a kind of metatextual thing, which is not. I'm not that naturally postmodern. Um, so that's it for now. There are many books I should have read, but then there are things like at the beginning of the year I read Turgenev's Father and Sons, which is an extraordinary novel, one of those short, perfect novels that you don't think for a second will live up to its billing, and it exceeds it in a second. So I am, filling in a lot of gaps, because then, compared to a lot of people on BookTube, I am really rather old. Um, but it just struck me a couple of days ago: Sentimental Education, I should have and haven't, and then The Confession about Jane Austen. So that's it. I'm sure I'll make another one of these the moment I discover a novel I should have read and haven't. Many thanks for listening. That's it. Goodbye.